Once upon a time, I lived happily ever after, and it wasn't the end, or it was only just the beginning. If you've explored some of my magic, you'll know that happily ever after is like a thing. And if you don't know that it's like a thing, I invite you to explore the video description below. I have links to the different content creations where I talk about infinite moments of happily ever after. Happily ever after doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing. Like, I was wearing a beautiful gown on a giant horse on a beautiful beach sunset, and I galloped across the beach and a mariachi band serenaded me or something. Like, happily ever after doesn't have to be a big crazy thing. Happily ever after can happen in the little moments. It can be, I heard a bird sing a beautiful song and I lived happily ever after. I looked at myself in the mirror and I recognized who I was and I lived happily ever after. Happily ever after can happen in the little moments. And so a great intention is to live happily ever after every day. And it helps to train our brain and our body to relax into the power of our loving presence and to look for the positive things to be grateful for. And it's a really great practice for inner child liberation because it can help us live happily ever after, which is really what the inner child wants. The inner child doesn't care about a lot of the stuff that adults tend to care about. The inner child just wants to live happily ever after, just wants to have their internal attachment needs met and have good little moments in the day. That's really what matters most to the inner child. So, thesis number 29. We're going to bring this all together in a magical way. You guys ready? Thesis number 29 of the Implicit Revelations case study that I've been working on the past many years, since before I can remember, literally. Hashtag amnesia joke. Thesis number 29 of the Implicit Revelations case study says that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments indirectly reconstructs the entire unconscious body-mind. So, like, a lot of things are happening even when you're only doing this one thing. And so, how can consciousness teach the brain and body to socially engage with itself? So in parts like 1 through 7 or whatever it was of thesis number 29, we looked at the idea of it and all the benefits from it. So if you haven't looked at those videos and the associated text that kind of summarizes the highlights, please go check that out. And I will leave some information about that in the video description below. You can also explore my video channel and my website for more information. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments radically reconstructs the entire unconscious body-mind. It rewrites the neurobiological social engagement system and transforms neural content and connectivity. It rewrites regulatory protocols throughout dozens of different brain-body systems, all without working directly with any of these systems. You can rewrite memories without touching the memories. You can reprogram regulation without intentionally trying to reprogram regulation. And so, how can this be personally applied? We've looked at the idea, we've looked at the benefits, we've looked at why there are so many benefits, okay? And if you haven't looked at those, go check out the previous videos for thesis number 29. You'll have all the insights and the magics. But how can this be personally applied in everyday life? And so I've spent the past several years exploring this idea since literally before I could remember. When Kristin was living with severe amnesia and going through all kinds of very unique health challenges, these ideas are what helped her through all of it, literally all of it. This one idea was the key cornerstone and the foundation of all of the healing transformation Kristin has achieved ever since she started the Implicit Revelations case study. And so over the years, I've developed many hundreds of ways to apply this. Literally, there are infinite ways to apply this. There's literally hundreds of ways. The beautiful part about this concept is how widespread it is. There is not a single moment of any day and any type of situation where this idea can't be applied. It can be applied literally anytime, anywhere, in any way. There are so many potentials for it. If you want to explore the most powerful potentials I've included dozens of different ways where consciousness can teach the brain and the body to socially engage with itself while nurturing and healing, transforming, empowering, uplifting, and liberating internal attachments in my Mere Play with Mere Power Creative Connections Healing Journey program for inner child liberation. This is the most powerful program I've ever created. Like, most powerful program ever. There are no words. It's incredible beyond measure, and the impacts are never ending. It's designed to sustain continued healing transformation for 5 to 10 years. It has so much magic packed into it. So if you want to explore these in the deepest possible ways, I invite you to explore Mere Play with Mere Power Creative Connections for Inner Child Liberation. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of unique and clever and fun ways where consciousness can teach the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. You can explore more about that in the video description below. The website link for that is kristinwindsor.com/creativeconnections. I also have several other offerings that have an emphasis on this concept, including Mere Play with Mere Power, Dear Inner Life Partner, and the Inner Child Hand Dance in my Healing Journey videos collection. So there's several different offerings through Kristin's Consciousness Consultancy. And if you ever want to connect one-on-one, then we can always explore ways to apply any of these ideas in your own personal healing journey in a way that personally fits who you are and where you're at. In the meantime, I want to give you guys a quick, easy, magical, miraculous, fun way to apply this, no matter who you are, where you're at. Okay? Infinite moments of happily ever after. Okay? So in the previous videos where I talked about infinite moments of happily ever after, I showed you guys books, binders filled with pages where Kristin had written down her infinite moments of happily ever after every single day for a couple of years. That process specifically engages the left brain. I mean, it engages both sides of the brain because your brain's working together in miraculous ways. But the process of writing that kind of a thing especially engages the left brain. Both sides of the brain. But if you had to evaluate which brain hemisphere was even more so engaged, even if it was 1%, it'd be the left brain. Because you're using words and writing and sequentiality and all this stuff. Okay. But social self-engagement more so uses the right brain. Again, both brain hemispheres are engaged. You're not isolating one brain hemisphere. But if you were to have it on a scale, instead of it being equal, it'd be ever so slightly a little bit up. The writing about your happily ever afters would more so, ever so slightly more so use the left brain. But there is a way to ever so slightly more so use the right brain while you're exploring your moments of happily ever after from the day. And so what I'm about to share with you is a powerful way to practice the application of thesis number 29. And if you do this every day, you will start to grow your personal power like you never imagined possible. Does that entice you? Because it should. It absolutely should. Loving liberation should always, always entice you and empower you and pull you into its magic. So one way to apply thesis number 29 while cultivating infinite moments of happily ever after, which is all our inner child really ever wants. The end of the day, before you go to bed, share your happily ever after moments out loud with yourself in the mirror while practicing distinction and connection between self aspects and striving to consciously nurture your own internal attachments. And so in this process, the first step is there's the observational self and the experiential self. The observational self is a space of pure presence and loving awareness. The observational self is always here and now and always in a space of conscious awareness. And that's all that it is. That's all that it is. The observational self has never had a personal experience. The observational self has never felt anything. The observational self has never conceptualized a past or a future. The observational self has never drawn a conclusion. The observational self has never known a personal story. The observational self has never had a personal preference. The observational self has never tasted, smelled, touched, seen, or thought anything before. The observational self has never had a personal experience. Okay? Understanding this is so important. That's one of the key foundations for applying these ideas. The observational self is a space of pure presence and loving awareness. It has no sense of a uniquely individualized self. It doesn't. Never has, never will. The observational self has never had a uniquely individualized sense of self, has never had a name, has never had a name that it has been called. The observational self has never felt the feeling of brushing its hair. The observational self has never had a personal experience ever in all of eternal existence. Distinct from and connected with the observational self is the experiential self. All personal experiences belong to the experiential self. They are distinct from each other, and they are connected with each other. And this is the process of self-attunement, which you can find out more about in some other content creations. I have a little magical diagram thingy-mabobber that explains self-attunement. The observational self is the awareness of self, and the experiential self is the experiencer of self. So, for example, I am not Kristin. I am the awareness of Kristin, who is distinct from and connected with the experiencer of Kristin. Okay, as an example of the application of that. While you're in a mirror at the end of your day, the observational self turns to the experiential self in a mirror, socially engaging with your own self, and is like, hey, I want to hear all about your happiness today. Will you please tell me about your infinite moments of happily ever after today? I want to hear every single thing that felt good and went well, every single moment you enjoyed, every single beautiful thing that you witnessed or experienced or thought or felt. I want to hear about all of it. And then the experiential self turns to the observational self in the mirror and says, oh my God, I would love to tell you about it because I love socially engaging, because it helps me feel seen and loved. It helps me feel safe and secure. It helps me feel supported and connected. It helps me feel respected and embraced with a sense of opportunistic space. It helps me feel celebrated and treasured and all kinds of good attachment need fulfillment. So absolutely, I would love to tell you about my happiness today because it fulfills my attachment needs to share this with you. And so the observational self and the experiential self spend time in a mirror before bed at the end of every day. And the observational self listens to the experiential self share their moments of happily ever after from the day. I really enjoyed the big blueness of the sky. I really loved smelling that super cool purple flower. I really loved seeing that stork fly in the sky. That was crazy. Storks were nuts. Like, how are they real? Like, what? I really loved looking at the owl fly through the sky. I loved the taste of my pasta. I loved whatever it is. And it could just be a couple things, or you could go through a summary of the entire day, step by step if you want to. But the point isn't about the experience. The experience doesn't matter. And that is also really important to know, because even if your day wasn't super mega awesome, this can still be applied and be effective, because you're not trying to go through your experience. You're trying to fulfill attachment needs for your experiential self. Big difference. Big difference. The observational self is only ever focused on the inner experiencer in the present moment. Only the experiential self focuses on experience. Huge distinction. So if you're focused on the past, if you're focused on the future, if you're focused on experience, then there is misattunement. Because the observational self doesn't care about experience, doesn't care about the past, doesn't care about the future. Those are all irrelevant illusions to the observational self in relation to these models I've created. The observational self only ever cares about the experiential self in the present moment. The observational self responds to the experiential self in the present moment. And that's where power lies. And so the observational self is creating space to hear about infinite moments of happily ever after, not to focus on experience, but to create a felt sense of attachment need fulfillment for the inner experiencer. So even if there wasn't like anything crazy awesome in the day, you can turn it around. Maybe it was a boring day, let's say, and you're like, man, I didn't do anything. Like I went for a walk, I watched a bird fly by, like it was just kind of a boring day. Then the observational self can be like, experiential self, I love the way you relax. I love the way you look at the big blueness of the sky. I love the way you watch the birds fly by. The observational self is creating space to fulfill attachment needs for the experiential self throughout 4 distinct attachment systems, while socially self-engaging. So you have a mirror. You're practicing distinction and connection between the observational self and the experiential self. The brain is being taught to socially self-engage by practicing distinction and connection between these self aspects. The body is learning how to socially self-engage because it's looking at its own self in a mirror while talking. In the process, you're creating new neural self-associations with yourself because you're seeing what your face looks like. You're seeing what your body looks like, potentially. You could practice this naked in the mirror if you want to. Don't have to. Just another option. You're creating new neural self-associations with your own voice as you speak out loud to yourself. And self-associations is one of the roles in the neurobiological social engagement system. It's the 17th role that I discovered through my Implicit Revelations case study, which expands on the polyvagal theory. And so, the process is just, tell me about your happiness today. Well, I had a yummy snack and I did this, and you're sharing this in a mirror. So it seems like it's a pretty simple practice, but there's like 200 trillion miracles happening. 200 trillion miracles happening in this very simple practice. And you don't have to be aware of the miracles for them to be happening, which is awesome. You don't have to know how miraculous you're being for you to be super mega miraculous in this. Consciousness is teaching the brain to socially engage with itself by practicing distinction and connection between the observational self and the experiential self. Simultaneously, consciousness is teaching the body to socially engage with itself by practicing this in a mirror. A glass where you see your reflection through. A mirror. Mirror. Words. And in the process, you're also nurturing inner child liberation by focusing on the good and what you're grateful for and the positives of life. And in this process, the observational self is creating space to fulfill attachment needs for the experiential self. Okay? So imagine, for example, that you're having a slumber party with your best friend, and or you're falling asleep next to your romantic partner. You can take your pick, whichever is more comfortable for you to imagine. It's the end of the day, and you've spent the whole day together. Sun up to sundown, every moment was spent together. Every single moment. Like even when you went to the bathroom, like you guys are that tight together. Like every single moment of the day. You had every meal together. You did every single thing together for the whole day. Sun up to sundown. And now you're laying down in bed for the night, and you're lying right next to them. It's your best friend and you're in sleeping bags next to each other, or it's your romantic partner and you're in the same bed with them, snuggled up with them. You can imagine this however you want to. And imagine they're like, okay, good night. They roll over, end of the day. How different is that from them rolling over to look you in the eyes and say, hey, I want to hear all about your happiness today. I know we spent the day together. I know I was with you for every minute of it. But I'd really love to hear all about your happiness today. I want to hear about all the things that made you smile. I want to hear about all the things that made you laugh. I want to hear about every single thing you enjoyed, and I want to hear about your enjoyment, not just the things you enjoyed. I want to spend a minute here and watch your face light up with happiness while you tell me about the good things of your day. I know I was there. I know I got to experience it with you and see you experiencing it, but I love you and you're my best friend, or you're my life partner, or you're my romantic lover, or whatever role you want to pick in this imaginary scene. And I want to hear about your happiness today. How powerful is that? If you're having a sleepover with your best friend, or you're falling asleep next to your romantic partner for the night and you've spent the whole day with them, how much would it mean for them to take the time and the energy to roll over and look you in the eyes and invite you to tell them about their happiness, about your happiness? How much would that mean to you? For someone you love and respect and cherish, to create the space to listen to all the moments where you found happiness in that day. That is what the observational self is here to do for the experiential self. The awareness of the self nurtures attachment needs for the experiencer of the self. If the experiencer of the self was trying to nurture their own attachment needs, there would be difficulties because they're the ones needing attachment need fulfillment. But because the awareness of the self doesn't have attachment needs, they don't have personal experiences, the practice of distinction and connection allows the awareness of the self to fulfill attachment needs for the experiencer of the self. And so in this practice, you can get a mirror, and at the end of the day before bed, the observational self rolls over and looks in the mirror. You can do this while you lay in bed with a mirror. You can do it in the bathroom mirror after you brush your teeth. You can do it in a mirror you prop up in your room, however you want to do it. She set up a mirror, and practicing distinction and connection between self aspects allows the brain to learn to socially engage with itself. And practicing this in a mirror helps the body learn to socially engage with itself. And in the process of the experiential self sharing with the observational self moments of happily ever after from the day, the observational self strives to ignite a felt sense of attachment need fulfillment for the experiential self. And so the observational self helps the inner experiencer feel seen and loved, feel supported and connected, feel safe and secure, feel respected and embraced, as the observational self creates space to hear about all the moments of happily ever after from the experiential self. And so this is one incredible way that you can personally apply thesis number 29 to uplift and transform your everyday healing journey through life. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing and liberating, healing internal attachments indirectly reconstructs the entire unconscious body-mind, uplifting neural content from every moment of life without touching any memory data, transforming neural connectivity so that explicit and implicit memory pieces connect better, neural data from every year of life connects better, and neural data in relation to all the different roles of the neurobiological social engagements system connect better, which helps to uplift and expand automated navigation regarding translations of personal experience, which also helps to bring balance and integration to different personal needs as one of infinite examples. You can explore more about that in earlier videos of thesis number 29. And this process gradually helps reprogram brain-body systems. And so every night before bed, in previous videos about happily ever afters, I shared the idea about writing them down. But the idea of living happily ever after can be applied in relation to thesis number 29. Using a mirror, the observational self asks the experiential self to share moments of happily ever after from the day. and you say them out loud while looking at yourself in the mirror and practicing distinction and connection. The observational self, hey, I want to hear all about your moments of happily ever after today. The experiential self, oh, well, it was incredible. I woke up and I just felt so much peace in me, and I was able to go outside and there's beautiful weather and fresh air to breathe. The observational self, that's amazing. I'm so glad you got to experience that, and I'm so grateful you're here sharing that with me. While talking aloud in a mirror. This is one of hundreds, literally hundreds. I've developed literally hundreds of fun, creative, super uplifting, playful ways to apply this idea of consciousness, teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. And they're all so unique, and there's so many different ways you can apply this, with practices while you eat, practices while you tie your shoes, practices while you're showering, different practices in the mirror, singing to yourself. There's so many different ways you can apply this. But it's just one example that you can take home today, right here, right now, and apply it if you want to. Create space to share infinite moments of happily ever after with your own self, practicing distinction and connection between the awareness of yourself and the experiencer of yourself, while in a mirror. And again, practicing distinction and connection between the observational self and the experiential self, that practice helps the brain learn to socially engage with itself. Doing this in a mirror where you're looking into the colored regions of your eyes, connecting with your consciousness and talking out loud when you're looking at yourself in a mirror, teaches the body to socially engage with itself. They're different things. The brain and the body learning to socially engage with themselves as consciousness guides and directs internal energy. Those are different things. The brain and the body learning to socially engage with themselves are different types of practices. Super cool stuff. Create space every night for the observational self to hear about the moments of happily ever after from the experiential self, and in that process, create a felt sense of attachment need fulfillment throughout 4 distinct attachment systems, which references my first thesis statement here in this Implicit Revelations case study. So, this is one of infinite ways that thesis number 29 can be applied. It's an easy, fun practice that anyone can do in a very simple way, very easily integrated. You just spend maybe 5 minutes before bed in the mirror. I've quite frankly spent like 1 to 2 hours on this practice alone. I'll go through every single detail of my day. I saw a ladybug and it had 10 spots on it, and and it's a great way to reprogram the brain to notice the good things and focus on the positives and express gratitude and create so much space for attachment and fulfillment as the observational self connects with the experiential self from the power of distinction and connection, achieving loving presence, self-attunement, and attachment and fulfillment. Very, very powerful stuff. And if these ideas interest you, I do encourage you to explore other of my creations. The Mirror Play with Mirror Power Creative Connections has dozens and dozens and dozens of different ways to apply the idea of consciousness, teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. So powerful. So powerful. The power only continues to expand the more that it's applied. So please feel free to explore that. My webpage that shares that program has lots of details about it. It goes through so many details. So even if you're like, yeah, I don't know, it semi-intrigues me, but I'm not really sure. If you're even the slightest bit curious, I encourage you to go check out the webpage to at least explore what it has to offer, just to see if it might potentially interest you or somebody you know. It goes through and it has lots of different information about what it is and what it offers, and sample sneak peeks and all kinds of stuff. So even if you're like not sure in any capacity, if you're the slightest bit curious, I encourage you to go check out the webpage and just see what it has to offer. And Mirror Play with Mirror Power Creative Connections has the most maximum magic in relation to application of thesis number 29. There are other practices. The Mirror Play with Mirror Power Dear Inner Life Partner has a very powerful practice to nurture internal attachments with the present day or present moment adult self while allowing consciousness to teach the brain and body to socially engage with itself. Emphasis on nurturing internal attachments by practicing distinction and connection between self aspects, fulfilling attachment needs for the present day adult. Super powerful practice, super fun, super playful, super creative, super just awesome to explore, enjoy, and experience. And again, the links for all of this are in the video description below. And there's also a much shorter practice. Instead of being like an actual program that takes a little bit of an investment, there's a very simple practice called the Inner Child Hand Dance, available in my Healing Journey videos. So those are other ways that thesis number 29 can be applied along the everyday healing journey. And if you ever want to explore other offerings, I have lots of other offerings through Kristin's Consciousness Consultancy, or if you'd ever like to explore any of these ideas in personal application to your own healing journey, I would love to connect with you one-on-one through a consciousness consultation. You can explore more about all of these offerings in the video description below and on my website at kristinwindsor.com. So, I think that about wraps this up. The last little piece of thesis number 29 for now. To bring it all together. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments reconstructs the entire unconscious body-mind, transforming, uplifting, restoring, and expanding and liberating navigation and regulation throughout the entire brain and body system, totally transforming uniquely individualized personal experiences of consciousness. And one way that this can be applied is by sharing infinite moments of happily ever after with yourself in a mirror every night. Emphasis of distinction and connection between the observational self and the experiential self, while having time in loving presence in a mirror and consciously focusing on the fulfillment of attachment needs throughout 4 distinct internal attachment systems. Super many mega magics, you guys. Super many mega magics. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for exploring these ideas. Thank you for creating space for me to talk about stuff that I love to talk about. And thank you for your courage to rise up into your personal power, to nurture the miraculous consciousness that carries you, and to dare to rise up into greater liberation so that more of you can be more of you. That's really the healing journey goal. It's not about changing anything or getting somewhere. It's really just about you getting to be more of who you really are and living in a space of ever expanding, loving liberation. That's really what it's all about. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Please be sure to check out the magics in the video description below. There's lots of super cool, many mega magical offerings. And I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day. I'm sending you and every part of your consciousness and your inner child lots and lots of love from my heart to yours. And I hope you have an incredible time exploring the potentials of your own loving liberation. Namaste, soul friends. The love and light in my divine consciousness, see and honor the love and light in your divine consciousness. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being you. I'll see you in another content creation. Bye-bye.